So the question is decarbonising power to 2020 and beyond. That's the question. I put it to you that the answer is electricity. Why do I say that? Well, quite simply because if you look at government, both in the UK and in the wider world, government policy recognises that the key to achieving its carbon reduction targets is the decarbonisation of power. If you can crack electricity, basically you achieve your decarbonisation, your emission reductions in industry, in the home through domestic use, and in transport, rail, but obviously road transport as well. And road transport, as we all know, and in particular passenger cars, are one of the biggest contributors in terms of greenhouse gases. So there's a need to reduce carbon in that respect. Now, first question is, do electric vehicles today make sense in carbon terms? And my answer to that is yes. Even at today's dirty grid mix of 500 or more grams per kilowatt hour, it still makes sense. You're looking at probably around about 70 grams per kilometre, and I'm talking, as one of the other speakers did, about well-to-wheel emissions. So not just tailpipe, this is the whole well-to-wheel situation. If you then look at what the Committee on Climate Change say we need to be doing in the UK to be even on a target to achieve something by 2050, by 2020 we need to be at 300 grams. You crunch the numbers again and you're at 42 grams. And of course, before we start patting ourselves on the back too much about that, let's not forget that the French are already, with their very strong nuclear portfolio, at something like 12 grams per kilometre. So by 2050 we've really got to look at the virtual decarbonisation of electricity and therefore the decarbonisation of road transport. And that is to focus perhaps too much on carbon. Let's not forget one of the earlier questions in an earlier session, there is particulate pollution, we don't have that, and there is also noise pollution. So the carbon case is there. The next one is practicality. So let's start chucking numbers around because that's the sort of thing we do at these things. Average journey is 26 miles, 87%, that's 7 out of 8 people drive less than 60 kilometres a day. But maybe for me the most significant thing is the B segment, the small car segment, is now the greatest segment, the largest segment in volume terms in the UK car market. 32%, a third of those vehicles never drive more than 100 miles, a single journey of more than 100 miles. Now, why do I keep talking about this? Because what I recognise is the argument against electric vehicles is always range. What I'm saying to you today is that today electric vehicles make a very, very practical choice for a significant proportion of the UK car buyers. If we fast forward and we assume that there will be steady, if not spectacular, improvements in battery technology, the sort of efficiency improvements in vehicles that we've already heard about, lightweighting, we could quite realistically expect vehicles with a range of 150 to 200 miles by 2020. If we couple that with the growth in infrastructure, with or without battery swapping stations, before anybody gets obsessed about that, what we're saying is that for basically the majority of motorists, the electric vehicle makes perfect sense. It can make perfect sense, but can you afford it? And electric vehicles are affordable. There are vehicles from major manufacturers in the showrooms today. There will be even more vehicles in the showrooms next year. They are already affordable. If you look at a purchase model where you say, I'm going to rent the battery, which is the biggest cost element of that vehicle, you can already deliver a vehicle with a front end, with an acquisition cost at the same level as an equivalent diesel. The consumer simply makes the choice, do they want the diesel version or do they want the electric version? And we have to start selling, and you have to start buying those vehicles today. Because, again, to quote the Committee on Climate Change, we need, if we're to crack our carbon target of 2020, we need 1.6 million vehicles on the road by then. The World Wildlife Fund aren't a million miles away, they say 1.7 million vehicles. So we need to start selling thousands of vehicles today, and in the second half of this decade, hundreds of thousands of vehicles per year. So it's not necessarily about the sexiest, the most interesting, the most technically challenging, the most innovative technology. It's about what is practical and affordable today, because impact in terms of reducing carbon is measured in two things. You've obviously got to be able to reduce the carbon per vehicle, but you've also got to get a very, very significant number of vehicles on the road if you're actually to make any sort of dent in the carbon emissions. And for that reason, for the reasons I've given you, the carbon case, the affordability, the practicality and the mass market appeal, I suggest to you that the answer in terms of decarbonising transport is the electric vehicle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.